Hello there. How on earth does all this add up? Something is rotten somewhere. We are constantly bombarded with claims from the greenies that wind and solar power are so cheap we must have more of it. So how come one offshore wind farm developer has already pulled out of its major Norfolk Boreas wind farm project off the east coast of England? And why is the FT reporting that Mads Nipper, the chief executive of renewable energy company Ørsted, is claiming that the UK will find it hard to attract new developers for offshore wind? Basically because they want to be able to lock a higher electricity price charging structure into their projects. The price per megawatt hour the UK government wants them to adhere to by contract, the price cap, is too low for them. They can't make a profit out of it because the supply chain costs for the likes of turbines and associated materials, as well as increased labour costs, is now so high as to make new projects economically non-viable. They need to be able to charge much higher prices for the electricity they will generate in future, or they'll go bust. In fact, the costs involved have risen by 40%. Those cost increases are now outpacing inflation. And where there is no price cap in other countries, such as Germany, the offshore wind developers are paying huge prices in their tenders to get the deal. And all that will be passed on fully to the consumer once generation starts. And that very expensive wind power could end up coming to us through one of the interconnectors when we're short of energy in a future cold winter. And in a sign that these companies require higher pricing structures, Ørsted had a 24% fall in their half-year revenue and a 68% collapse in pre-tax profits. Because, says the FT, the price of electricity has been too low. That didn't do much good to the company's share price either. And they're not the only ones. Siemens is also having major issues. Now, a lot of people are blaming the UK government for this, saying the Contracts for Difference or CFD system is all fouled up. But I would retort by pointing to the fact that where there is no CFD, such as the German example I've already talked about, then the companies bid huge prices for the business, knowing they can fully recoup the costs and charge what they like once they're up and generating. So where is all this cheap electricity going to come from then? It looks like we'll either be sat in the dark or still be paying through the nose for our electricity. Especially when you want to charge your battery-powered SUV. So much for EcoLoon claims that green energy will force energy prices down. It's looking more and more like we're being forced by our establishment into putting all our energy eggs into one basket. And that basket is getting pricier by the day. And remember, businesses that are involved in supplying and making green energy equipment and developing wind farms, including the lawyers, are in it to make money. They are as likely to use any monopoly or cartel as any oil or gas firm is. They are as likely to price gouge as any supermarket or petrol forecourt is. They are businesses, not charities. I dread to think what the prices will be once they've managed to shut down all the gas generators and continued to delay a resurgence in the UK nuclear power plant fleet. And if those wind farms were run by government, prices would be set purely for short-term political gain, not for the good of the nation. Prepare to be well and truly shafted. And now we're told by the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, that the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and that now all but invisible Chancellor Jeremy Hunt are filling the nation's coffers by gouging us with a huge tax rise, says the Telegraph. According to the OECD, payments on earnings and wealth, like income tax and capital gains tax, have pulled in 39.2% more dosh in the first quarter of this year compared to the end months of 2019. And that's far more than other developed nations such as the USA, where similar taxes have increased by 30%. And this is down to the freezing of tax thresholds, and those thresholds are due to remain in place until 2028. More tax rises by stealth. Someone's got to pay for all those mismanaged PPE contracts and all those billions handed out to fake businesses that can now never be recouped. Looks like we'll all be paying much more tax well into the future. And what do you think Keir Starmer's Labour Party would do if they ever, shudder, got the reins of power? Suddenly have a Damascene moment and become the party of lower taxation? Ha! Good luck with that one. People are getting pay rises, many below the rate of inflation, but they are then sucked into paying a higher proportion of it in tax, especially if they get a wage rise that puts them into a higher tax bracket, as well as paying more for their everyday shopping and rent or mortgage. It looks like the reality is beginning to dawn with some amongst the not-so-serried ranks of the Tory MPs, because they're calling on Rishi Sunak to resurrect the plan of the former Home Secretary Priti Patel to actively push the Channel boats back into French waters. This would then force the French Navy to pick them up and return them to France. These tactics have been used successfully by the Greek Navy, pushing boats back into Turkish waters. And it's legal too, as far as I can make out. Patel announced the policy in 2021, but The Times says that policy was withdrawn by officials before the inevitable court challenge started. Paying people to stop them at source hasn't so far worked, nor has paying the French to stop it, nor has legal and law enforcement action. The only thing left is to leave the ECHR and get tough. And now we learn of the antics of the expanding so-called boycott, divestment and sanctions industry via the Express. These are outfits that produce toolkits, imagery and research documents for activists to use to try and get advertisers to boycott certain organisations, like news outlets such as GB News, to get them shut down through lack of funding. And they claim it's to stop funding hate, not realising the irony of them being hateful by doing so. But one of these toolkits is alleged to contain anti-Semitic material. An anti-Semitic conspiracy theory claiming Israel is a model for worldwide repression that has played a key role in what is claimed to be an international growth in racism and militarism. Have they never heard of China or Russia then, or even Iran? Anyway, it is this conspiracy theory that forced Keir Starmer to sack Rebecca Long-Bailey from his shadow front bench back in 2020 when she shared an article containing that conspiracy theory. And it shows the true colour of this so-called ethical boycotting industry, doesn't it? I wonder who funds these organisations.